You hear me?
Yeah.
So we are going live right now, and I will set up the web page in a minute. So
can you let us know when the web page is ready?
Yes, sure. Yes, so we should be live right now.
Cool.
Cool.
So you introduce Lopen first, and then I'll introduce
Benna?
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Just a second. Right. So hi, hello everyone, and my name is István Márkúj, and you're very welcome to the next wave of the Lopen after last week for the 18-hour streaming. We decided we're gonna keep continue for every week a couple of interview. And I just like to welcome you and Sam and Berna to this conversation today. And we're gonna be just keep tipping away for the permaculture wave. So have fun for the surfing. Hi Sam and Berna, and thanks for coming in it.
Hey Istvan. So I'll give a quick intro to our guest today. Brenna is a permaculture illustrator from Australia. She lives in Victoria with David Holmgren, the co-originator of the permaculture concept. In her first beginnings, if I'm correct, Brenna, please interrupt and educate me. But from what I understand, you took a journey through the Americas, traveling on a bike on and off. You went down to South America area and kind of discovered this thing that had originated in your homeland. Kind of blew off the cap of your head, decided you'd come back and you'd start investigating this. And now you're a well-known permaculture illustrator. Brenna, the bits of this journey, it's quite a dynamic and interesting one, because I think it's happening to lots of young people more and more and more, is they're realizing there's this path that we could take, there's this direction we can steer the world into. What was the most alluring thing for you, bringing you into the permaculture world?
Ooh, firstly, I'd like to commend you, Sam, on your memory. That's
Hey.
stems from a conversation we had maybe 2 years ago, and that was good.
Thanks.
What drew me most to permaculture at the start? I remember that I used to think a lot when I was a child and when I was a teenager as well. You know, there's a lot of causes in the world, and do we put our energy into saving the dolphins, or do we think about poverty and inequality in other countries, or do we think about poverty and inequality in our own country, or should we be thinking about the food system? And I wasn't sure which path was the right one. And I knew they were all valuable, but then I started to learn about permaculture, and it all just kind of came together. Like, if I think about permaculture, it includes everything that I think is valuable and important. So that was really what got me. It just made more sense than anything else I'd heard.
So how long has it been since that time, Brenna?
When I was traveling and I was volunteering and living kind of more in the gift economy and less in the monetary economy, that's when I started to hear about these ideas, and then volunteering 3 months at a time at different places, really learn about them. And I also did my permaculture design course over in Chile. So that was in 2015, 2014. And we also started in around 2016 teaching permaculture over there once my group and I had some more experience. And I came back to Australia start of 2017 and started living here. So it's been a very quick journey. I'm envious of people like David Holmgren and a lot of other people who come here who have decades of experience. I'm really excited for when I can count myself as one of those people. But it's been an intense few years, definitely.
Yeah, but it's been 5 or 6 years more or less, which is still like
adding up now.
for a young age, it's a significant amount of time. who have been spent in the permaculture world. How have you seen your understanding of it or your involvement in it shift and change during those years?
It's been interesting learning about permaculture in one continent, and then so in South and Central America, and then coming over to Australia and learning about the differences. So they say that gardening is the gateway drug to permaculture in Australia. And you can tell that we're avid gardeners because we have our British heritage and everyone has their lawns and their roses out front. And we love watching Gardening Australia. But in South and Central America, natural construction is really the gateway drug to permaculture. So if you don't have a home or a place to gather, what are you doing? The general consensus over there seemed to be you can chuck seeds in the ground and they'll grow. That's the easy part. But putting together a home where people can be safe and secure, that's, that takes community. And so you find this kind of beautiful overlap between wanting to build out of the materials from the place, so natural construction with clay and sand and straw from your own property, but also building in conjunction with other people, because it's really hard to build a house alone, but it's actually really fun and easy to build one with a whole crew. So I thought after a couple of years there of learning and teaching permaculture that I knew what I was talking about. And then I came back here and Dave Holmgren started talking to me about the different types of eucalypts in the Hepburn region, and he just knew so much, and I can't tell one eucalypt from another. So I thought, I've got a lot to learn.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a common one, hey, the process of humbling in the permaculture journey.
Yeah. I'll add one more thing to that. I've felt that there's a growing urgency around climate change, and in PDCs that we were teaching 3 years ago, you kind of had, people were coming to you wanting answers, and I felt in that 3-year bracket, the urgency with which people want answers around climate change, around a future, around the question, what can I do, has become more so. And in that time, we've seen the school strikes, and we've seen Extinction Rebellion, and we've seen the bushfires, and now COVID. And it's a very tumultuous age to be alive, and a very tumultuous age in which to care and want to help. So that for me is one of the biggest changes in permaculture. It's no longer what it maybe used to be, permanent agriculture, and how do I design a functional block of land to meet my needs. Now it's, okay, the land's one thing, but how do I use my resources, my skills, my voice to make the most potent change in my community? Where if I'm a nurse or a teacher or an artist, how do I do that? So that's the way I see permaculture changing.
Yeah. Touching on what you've just brought up, like how permaculture is kind of like this anchored movement in things, I guess things coming up really, really tumultuous, and we can only look at it getting worse. I think all these things are signs for the coming future. What because you've been doing some art recently around like the COVID stuff and our way forward. Do you have any idea on what events are coming, or any idea of a vision that you'd paint for the events that are coming?
Ooh, it's a tricky one, because they say whenever we try to predict the future, we end up influencing the future to be otherwise than what we've predicted.
Well, let's see.
Look, with the lockdown, we've seen that as various societies and cultures, we're actually capable of making huge change overnight. Changes like a drastic reduction in air travel and also car use, and in some ways in consumption as well, are things that we thought were impossible, and that they could never be done by governments or by collective willpower. And we've seen that it is possible. We've also seen that the reduction in emissions may not have been as high as we would have liked after seeing air travel and car travel be so drastically reduced, which says to me it really is about collective action to influence those in power. It's not just about that individual action is often overstated, and it is really important and empowering and exciting to reduce air travel. To, I'm trying to go car free at the moment. We try to grow almost all of our food here. It's good to do that because there are so many people, and also because we in the privileged world have a much higher ecological footprint than other people. So we should try to limit our share. That said, it's not enough. We've got to do all of those things, and we have to go out there and lobby politicians, and we have to vote and raise awareness and have climate conversations at our dinner tables with our friends and our family. So I see that COVID has kind of shaken things up so much and shown us that there's a possibility of change, and also shown us the direction that change needs to head in. It's not just about reducing plastic use at home, although that is important. It's also about bigger picture stuff, Green New Deal stuff, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, for sure. But touching as well on that aspect, or that notion that our fossil fuel, even though it's gone down so much, people not driving, airplanes not flying, these big actions that need to be taken, what can permaculture do to provide a clear way forward for this? If we've got to reduce or give people an option on how to cut down on, or how to not use these industries that human beings are so reliant on. I think you touched on it a little bit, like talking about how you traveled through the Americas, or how you live today. But these big industry standards, these big industry reliances, what are simple steps that people at home could take, or could do, or could influence in order to redirect this sinking ship?
Well, permaculture is really powerful now more than ever, because it offers solutions. And when we teach children about permaculture, that's the way we frame it. Permaculture is solutions to the problems that you're facing. What are you concerned about? What are you worried about? What problems are going on in big picture in your life? Okay, permaculture might have an answer. And now, we saw that with the fire.
Yeah.
A lot of permaculturists know a lot about fire preparedness, and obviously all fires are different, and you can't always predict what happens, but you can be more prepared than your neighbour by investigating what's happened in the past, what works for some people. And so again, with COVID, we saw that while lockdown, for those who weren't directly affected by COVID illness or death, lockdown meant a restriction on our movements and a different way of being able to purchase food, and some food systems were damaged. But people who already practice permaculture, in the sense of growing a lot of food, having really strong bonds with community, so being able to trade for things when they didn't necessarily have money, having things to fill their days with when they didn't necessarily have paid work, having reliable water and possibly off-grid systems. We're connected to the grid, but I have friends who aren't affected by power outages. These are all things that permaculture preparedness teaches us, and we're all about building resilience. So coming out of COVID, permaculture has a whole basket of solutions, and there's no one size fits all, but that's the beauty of it. It's been taken, it was put out into the world by Bill and David, and people all over the world took hold of it and made it their own and made it localized. And so it's not about asking, hey, David Holmgren, how do we fix the world? It's about saying, okay, who's kind of doing permaculture stuff where I live, and what are they doing? What do they grow in my climate? How are they navigating the local laws that are prohibiting gathering firewood or whatever your thing is? How are they running goats on the common lands to reduce fire hazard in their area? Because what works in my area will be different. And that sort of, that spread of permaculture and the flexibility is what makes it really exciting in post-lockdown world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, talking to the people living on my granddad's property every now and again, I doubt they even know what was going on for like the first couple, or at least the first month or something. I don't think their life changed a lot. A lot of the people in that region, I don't think they knew what was going on at all. because they had some sort of disconnection, active disconnection from an established system, and were working on, they grew their own food, they caught their own water, they produced their own electricity. And I think for the majority of people who do this, the hit that this has been drastically reduced, which is an immense privilege. And I think in this situation and this time, to be seeing people suffering in the first world and the third world, and to be seeing such strong issues arise when people have ridden the wave so well, it feels almost like a responsibility, don't you think, Brenna?
Yeah, and I've heard permaculture has been described as a beacon in the dark, as a lighthouse. So designing your life in a way where you can meet most of your needs yourself, and when you produce minimal waste, not just in the form of plastic, but we're talking your human newer systems where things don't leave the system, they enrich the system. Even if you're the only one in your town living this way, if you keep going, you're there to offer advice when people encounter problems. I've had so many people call and say, hey, I'm trying to do the sourdough thing, or even I'm trying to bake bread for the first time in my life. How do I do it? And we're getting countless, emails and social media and just people asking for advice because they know, oh, these guys have been doing it for a while. So that's exciting to be able to be practiced enough in the knowledge to share it, and also to have the resources here to say, hey, you need help. Hey, if you end up homeless, or hey, in the fires, if you need stuff, you need seedlings, what do you need to be able, like we were preserving food and drying fruit like mad, thinking, okay, amazing. COVID takes hold and supermarket supply chains run out. We need kilos and kilos of dried pears and whatever else, just so we can give stuff to people, and then seedlings and seeds, so that when spring comes around, we can help people take off with their gardens. So it's a different way of life, but resilience isn't just for the people living it, it's for the whole community.
It is really that, because I think there's lots of situations where people feel like a lonely ship, and they get worried about the people living next to them or something. And it's like two options, like cooperating and really trying to lift the people around you, or becoming a bit of a fortress and trying to take on the battle yourself. It seems like a beautiful solution.
Yeah, one really great example of that is that Sue Dennett, who is David Holmgren's partner, who lives here as well, has kind of like an informal cooperative going on, where she bulk buys local organic or biodynamic grain, pulses, legumes, things that we don't produce. So we don't grow our own spelt, but we like to eat spelt bread. She'll go and buy a whole car full from a local distributor, and then call up everybody that she knows, and she's got an email list, and says who wants what, and they let her know, and people come and pick up a 25-litre bucket of tahini. She just makes that really easy for families that might not be able to drive out, and it also means one car trip instead of 50. And the best part is that some of those people then get together with some other friends and make their own informal bulk buy scheme. Awesome. And it's self-replicating, which is fantastic.
There's a question that's come up from someone watching. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. So Istvan, could you say the name? Because I think I'll mess it up. Is it Yanya?
Yanya pointing at your screen.
Kadun. I'll just ask the question. Okay, because your microphone's still off. Okay, anyway, if I get this right, I'm sorry, Yanya, if that's not your name.
Yanya.
Hey, awesome.
Hi, Yanya.
So, Brenna, which is the best way to reach and teach more people? A question coming in from Yanya.
Thanks, Yanya. That's a really excellent question. I think for me, you can try to force yourself to do something that doesn't sit comfortably, and at some stage you'll burn out from that. So the best way is to look inside and say, what makes me really come alive as a person? So for me, that's drawing and putting together complex information into a visual image. For Formidable Vegetable, that's writing songs. For David Holmgren, it's writing papers and getting up and speaking in front of people. You might be a really great parent, and your way of making change in the world might be helping your kids and your kids' friends to answer some of the tough questions. You might be a landscaper who works in the local community, and your way is trying to source less destructive or less chemical based items to do your work. It's whatever you put yourself into 110%, and it doesn't need to be a job. It can be a hobby, it can be a passion, it can be that you used to sew all the time when you were in high school and sew all your own clothes, but you haven't done it in ages, but you're thinking maybe that's your mark on the world. It's about using what really makes you come alive and just pushing that in the direction of positive change.
Yeah. Really cool. I really like there seems to be something thematic in your thinking, Brenna, around this really like not one size fits all approach of how people need to find their own journey and find their own niche in time and space with permaculture. Can you speak to that? Yeah,
just as you're talking, Sam, it makes me think sometimes we have people that come to our permaculture design courses, and they see a few teachers over the 2 weeks, and they see a few examples of permaculture sites, and sometimes you see people thinking, and I did this in my first PDC, so I'll speak for myself. You think, oh, this permaculture place is so great. They've got this 20-hectare farm of blueberries and corn and 10 natural constructions and 30 volunteers, and they've got courses running back to back all through the year. I'm going to do that because that's permaculture. And I remember thinking, I could probably figure out how to do this. And then somewhere along the line realized, one vegetable patch is enough for me, more than enough, and it's definitely enough work. And also, I'm not them. And you see these great people teaching at permaculture courses or doing, great public speaking things. And I hear a lot of people come and say, oh, do that, but I can't be an activist because I'm not good at public speaking, or I couldn't stand up and run a course. And I say to them, well, what else can you do? What do you really like? Well, I like writing. Well, why don't you go with that? Because we need more writers. There's enough dudes standing up there speaking at us about this. We've got that covered. There's enough massive permaculture sites with 1,000 gardens and just as many volunteers. Cool, we've done that bit. We need you as a writer, or you as a nurse, or you as a parent to go with what really makes you happy. And it really is the diversity that makes a movement strong. There was I think it was in Naomi Klein's book On Fire. Ooh, apologies if I'm misremembering the source, but it's a she's talking to it's a paper that she did as a speech to a group of university graduates, and there was somebody came to her and said, oh, it's been training myself to they were like in the Arctic or something, and like freezing her butt off for weeks, trying, and as a protest, kind of chaining herself to equipment so they couldn't do drilling in this fragile ecosystem. And that young woman said to Naomi Klein, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I should be back in the US getting people to divest and making a difference that way. And the thing is, even if we're there on the front line chaining ourselves to stop this huge multi-billion-dollar destructive enterprise, we might not feel like we're doing enough unless we accept that we're part of a movement. So it's not what I do, and it's not what you do, Sam. It's what we and everyone else as part of our movement does together that matters. So if you can do your bit that's sustainable and really exciting for you, that's what we need. Yeah, we don't all need to be worrying about divestment or all need to be chaining ourselves to machinery, unless that's what really makes you come alive, in which case go for it. Do that. Don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it paints a beautiful image of like a beehive for me, because it is a thing of like, or an immune system as well, like a human immune system, of where if some of us are unhealthy, it kind of makes all of us sick. So if we're putting a lot of our energy or all of our energy into something that we don't love out of desperation or fear for something that's coming up, how do we stay strong as a movement? How do we be happy to keep going? How can we give all our energy to something that's important? So I think what you say is really, really powerful. And I think that that's why you're becoming more and more of a mouthpiece for permaculture, Brenna. That's something that I've heard people describe you as. I mean, I know people all over the world who know your work, which is pretty incredible. Like I've got people from all over the place, from the Middle East, from I think every continent. I have people from every continent on my Facebook page, and I think I've seen someone from every continent post your work. So it's definitely getting around. So in being an influencer, is there something that you but it must be a strange door to be stepping through, no? Going, whoa, wow, my stuff is touching a lot of people. Is there something that comes up in your head about what sort of messages you're putting out there? Is there anything that changes, or does nothing change?
It's interesting because for me, the kind of drawing that I do regularly is a very personal experience. So I'll hear something, I'll hear a podcast, I'll read a book, I'll read an article and think, oh, that's gold. And I'll draw a little sketch there in my little sketchbook, and it's full of thumbnails of ideas, hundreds of them, probably thousands, too many. And then translate to paper. And there's this kind of, when an idea arrives, when it crosses my path, it seeds itself in me such that I have this compulsion to get it out, and I carry around this, like right now it's been over a week since I sat down to draw them all out. So I've got this little bag of idea seeds weighing on my shoulder at the moment. And tomorrow, hopefully I'll get the chance to get them on paper and kind of feel a bit lighter for a few days until they accumulate again. And it's such a strange experience to be here in my little tiny house at my little desk, drawing things that to me make sense, some sort of sense, and then releasing them to the world. And yeah, some of them just take off, and it's beautiful that what resonates with me resonates so strongly with others. It's not something I expected, and it's something that I still find really surprising and humbling. I'm really grateful that, messages, because it's about kind of, for me, the information's out there, but it's about inspiring action in people. It's about messages that really make people go, yes. And I've had some people say, oh, I looked at your drawing about riding a bicycle. I'm getting off my phone right now to go ride my bicycle for the first time in 2 years, that sort of thing.
Oh, awesome.
I'm so inspired to go plant my garlic now. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm just going to have a go. Yes, this is what we want. This is messaging that inspires change in people and that is exciting for them. We don't want to force drudgery or, compromise. We want people to actually, permaculture is about abundance. It's about your best life. It's not about giving things up. So yeah, when it works and one of my drawings hits the mark in the way I've intended, and I get that sort of reaction, I just think, wow, this is amazing. I'm grateful for, as crazy as it is, technology has really helped me along as an artist. I get to have a fully attended gallery exhibition every day of the week.
Good point.
Instead of having boxes and boxes of art that, no one ever sees sitting in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool way to see it. We've got a question that I'll let slip for a little while from a guy named Ravi. He's asking, where do you buy your stationery?
It's an interesting thing. One time I was teaching with Rosemary Morrow after I met you, Sam, and we did this exercise where we took the 12 permaculture principles And if you want to read about them, you can go to permacultureprinciples.com, and there's a great explanation. And Charlie, who's speaking tomorrow, has a whole album on these, 12 songs for 12 principles. And we applied the principles to our work. Okay. So this was a really interesting way. I'd encourage you to try this when you make your cup of tea tomorrow morning. Sit down with a pen and paper, look up the principles and say, okay, how does each of these apply to my work? And there's one cracker of a principle, my favorite, called produce no waste. And it just sat with me because I use non-renewable resources in my art. And it's generally accepted that art, especially watercolor painting, can be a very low carbon activity, even though you do buy some supplies. But I thought, oh, I've got to work towards making this no waste. That's kind of, I like a challenge. It's kind of what makes me come alive. What's something that seems unachievable now, but that I can work towards. And so, yeah, I thought about it. So I already had a bunch of watercolors, which I had bought from a small family run art shop in my hometown near Sydney. And they will last me for about 8 years. So I don't have to think about this for quite a while. So a tube of watercolor this big lasts about that long. And my pens, I'm transitioning to using those old-fashioned ones with a nib and ink that you can dip in, because they're zero waste. Whereas, yeah, the other pens that I use, I can go through 2 pens in a book, and the amount of books I end up doing, it's not a huge amount of waste, but it's more than I'm comfortable with. Paper as well, trying to source paper that's recycled has not been impossible, but it's all these things are a challenge until you find what avenues you can go by. But with my products that I sell through my shop, I have some stickers and cards and posters, and we've also got an educational card deck as well for teaching permaculture. All of those are done at a fantastic local family run, almost zero waste business that uses 100% recycled paper. They have a special printing technique where they put everything on the same sheet so that there's zero offcuts, and they're really wonderful to deal with. So that side of it was really easy. But yeah, it was kind of like this fun project. How do I apply this principle to illustration? And part of the reason that I chose to do watercolor illustration in the first place was at university in my second year, we had been encouraged to try all of these different styles, and I was really into painting with oil colors at that time. And I sat down and said, look, we've got to be pragmatic about this. Which is the path you're going to follow? Because your second year university, there's no going back after this in all of my wisdom. And I thought about it, and I tried out all different things. And yeah, watercolor is so low waste that I couldn't deny that. So I changed, and it's a really hard medium to work with if you're not used to it, because you can't paint over mistakes. But obviously I got used to it, and yeah, I would never go back now. Gosh, it's so portable, low toxicity, low waste. I'd highly recommend for all you budding artists out there to give it a shot.
So that kind of like, I'm not much of an artist, Brenna. So sorry if my art questions make like 0 sense. Like they just like fall flat. But I'm curious as to actually what process you've had to go through to think, how am I going to make the most impactful image I can? What actually happens in your head before you blurt it all out onto the paper? How do you make it as simple and communicative as you do when it's such a complex thing to communicate?
I'll tell everyone a secret, and I may regret this, but if you go right to the end of my Instagram feed, like 2 years ago when I started, the drawings are probably not as effective as they are now. So I just was really trial and error. I had no idea. And I get so many ideas and facts, and I think, oh, I want to do an image about, I don't know, the industrial agriculture. So I go and like read everything I could about the current facts and stats and figures, and I'd spend 6 hours doing this, and then I'd be too exhausted to do the drawing and too much going on in my head to put it on paper. So now I'll read a book on the topic, I'll let it sit, while I'm reading a book on another topic, something will just pop into my mind, and that's what you want. It's the synthesis of the information. It's not necessarily every fact and, you know, every detail, because that's what books are for. Images are for something else. So I really had to learn not necessarily, like, to keep it more simple, yes, but also to pull out the most crucial points and go with that. Because if it was up to me, all my drawings would be 10 meters squared, but you know, the same tiny little stuff, and I'd show everything. And that, but that doesn't work so well on an Instagram, you know, on your phone.
Yeah, very cool. But it is amazing. Like I've seen different parts of your work, and you do really detailed stuff, but the things that really hit the mark seem to be your more simple drawings. Like your more simple illustrations really seem to really deliver something. And I guess that's, maybe it's more cartoon art. Would you describe it like this?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more like cartooning, which is interesting. Like, I think had I been born maybe in the 70s, that's what I'd be doing. Well, had I been born in the 50s, you know, working in the 70s and 80s, I'd be trying to get into a newspaper somewhere and do cartooning. But now it's all about illustration. But I still like to keep it old school, you know. I can touch up things with Photoshop at the end, but I hate it. So I try to avoid that. And most of my images, like some of the ones here, are just 100% hand-drawn. David Holmgren's book, Retro Suburbia, this one. Every image in that is 100% hand-drawn, because I actually didn't own Photoshop or know how to use it back then, 2.5 years ago. So if there was a mistake, I redrew the whole image or figured out how to kind of paste something over to fix it up. And there's a lot of pressure to not work like that and go 100% digital, but I don't know. There's a lot to be said for reading a book that you can hold in your hands, and there's a lot to be said for art that's still made on a page, I think.
Hey, Brenna, before I go on to the next question that's been sent in. Hey, Kananda. Hi. Can you give us a little, like, just for the people that don't know, what is Retro Suburbia?
Retro Suburbia is David Holmgren, the co-originator of the Permaculture Concept's most recent book, which came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Downshifter's Guide to a Resilient Future. And it has a great website. And if you Google Retro Suburbia, it's retrosuburbia.com, you can look it up. And it's this huge handbook, which is divided into 3 sections: the built, the biological, and the behavioral field. So the built section is about how you can retrofit your house, how you can work with what you have to make it better. The biological is about what you can plant, so kind of how we traditionally see permaculture, gardens, that sort of thing. And the behavioral is what you can do yourself without any tools, any house, any garden, to still do permaculture and make your world a better place. And the thing that's really special about this book is it's pitched at people who live in the cities and suburbs. It's not about having a huge block of land that you can make your farm out in the sticks, as we say in Australia, out in the country and having a paradise out there. No, it's about doing permaculture where real people live. And so many people live in the suburbs and the cities. So how do you grow food in a rental? How do you make change in your community when you've only been there for 6 months and you might move again next rental? How do you do these things when you don't have much money and no access to land? It's a really excellent read. And as of a couple of weeks ago, it's available on a pay what you can basis. So go to retrosuburbia.com to see. You can download the book, see if you like it. And if you do and want to buy a copy, go for it. Otherwise, it might be in your library. I'd check it out.
Yep. Yeah, super awesome. I remember when I read it, it was just fantastic. It was this, for me, a big revelation on how I'm very project driven. I get really excited about doing a project. And I think that's why the country has pulled me so much and why I like working on big scale land projects. But as soon as I read this book, it kind of became like, whoa, everywhere is a big scale land project. Like everywhere I can apply my imagination, I can apply the things I've learned and the things I'm looking at. in all sorts of intricate and interesting ways, applying landscape design to people, to smaller houses, to my relationship with the people across the fence. How can we create a commons? How can we turn this block into a farm? This for me was extremely exciting. I think I became an annoying neighbor, but ultimately a good one. Yeah, I was I never thought I'd be
the first chapter is a story called Aussie Street,
yeah.
Which is one of David's presentations, and it traces a fictitious street of 4 houses through the decades as they make or don't make different changes, and it shows which ones are more resilient. And this, what you're saying, Sam, about being the annoying neighbor, knocking down the fence, farming together, having kids running around between the houses, is kind of what that chapter is getting at. And we're actually making a children's book version of that, which
Awesome.
is in the process of having the layout and design done. So watch this space. In the next few months, hopefully, we'll have the Retro Suburbia Kids book to inspire all of the kids
That's
to knock
so
down
cool.
the fences.
Good on you, Brenna. Awesome. Are there any other projects that you're doing that we should know about?
Yeah, Ross Mars has just had a book called Life in the Garden released, which is a kind of science and activity based book for children. And it's been published by like a school publisher, so it's marketed at schools, but really great resource for people who are homeschooling in lockdown. And he's putting together a second version, so I'm frantically illustrating that. And I'm also doing one with the CSIRO called Bee Detectives, about pollinators and bees that you would find in an Australian garden, getting up close and personal with them. And Australian TV personality Costa is writing his book at the moment.
Whoa,
so
very
that's
cool.
in the works as well. I'm going to be very busy this winter.
I think every Australian will be excited to read that one.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So you you get to learn off the bat of this. You just get awesome learning opportunities as well. You get to hang out with people that really know their shit, know their stuff.
Yeah,
Spend time with them.
It's great fun kind of cherry picking what jobs you do, just because they're people you'd love to have a friendship with, or their project's so exciting that you can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've got another question from the people watching. This one's from Keely Boom. Good name, Keely. What would your essential art supplies be out in the garden / bush, recording observations and ideas?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. That makes me want to go out and draw. I keep a nature journal, and I'd encourage anybody who's kind of thinking about doing a bit more art, or maybe haven't done any art in a long time, but you used to enjoy it, or you enjoyed it as a kid, or you've got a garden going and you want to kind of understand it on a deeper level. Get any old book, go out with any old pen or pencil, whatever you feel comfortable with, and just draw everything that's around you. So draw what the weather's like, draw your favorite spot to hang out in the garden, draw what's flowering right now, scoop a bit of leaves from under a fruit tree, draw the bugs in the soil. I draw everything we've got planted, and I do it every month, so you get to see, so that I have a practical record of what we planted and what we didn't. I also draw what's in flower, what pollinators I can see, what the geese and the goats and the chickens are all doing. It is the most exciting way to be outside in nature and having some form of creative expression. You can stick things in there, you can paint it if you want. And so when I go out and do that, or a more traditional kind of a study of a scene, I don't have a fancy watercolor palette. I don't have any fancy equipment. I have my tubes of paint and a plate, a white dinner plate. And that's what my paint goes on. And I have a mug with water in it, just a regular mug that I next day will drink tea out of, and one nice brush, because that's all you really need. Oh, and a bit of an old towel that I've ripped up, which I can dab my brush on if I need to dry it. So it really doesn't have to be complicated. A bit of a plate, a bit of water, a towel and a brush, and you'll be making masterpieces, I'm sure.
Then hearing that was really nice, because is there still light where you are? There's still a bit of light, yeah?
There outside is, yeah.
is it possible, will your internet connection / device allow us to see a little bit of what's outside your door?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I can show you outside my window.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Let's see. I'll bring the microphone. Very technology will allow us. I will. I'll take you outside. So this is Meliodora, which David Holmgren and Sue Dennett purchased in 1986, which was the year I was born. So Meliodora is now 34 years old.
We can't hear you very well, Brenna.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll plug the mic back in.
No, that sounds. Maybe you just need to be closer to the. Oops.
Closer to the interwebs.
Maybe.
I need my tech guy currently meditating.
That.
Yes. So from my place, which I'll show you in 1 second, that's better, isn't it? I think you can see behind me, there's the dam. There's another dam.
I know.
And another dam. There's my little bridge. I won't show you the other way because my washing's hanging up there. And my windows look out over the orchard. So they all just lost their leaves because we had quite a hard frost a couple of nights ago. But they're all quinces, hazelnuts, walnuts, and one persimmon which doesn't have all that much fruit. So when I'm drawing, I get to look out over the orchard and see, oh, so many birds come to visit us. It's like bird TV. It's looking a bit bare at the moment. From 1 week to the next, it's amazing how it's changed.
Yeah. So what have been some of the most inspiring things you've drawn from living at Meliodora?
It's been very interesting to, be here and be so immersed in permaculture. I count myself, I feel really grateful that I can be. And so, we, not only do David and Sue live here, but we have volunteers coming through who all have their own life experience. And we also have people drop by. Like the first time I met Rosemary Morrow, he was here on a visit. We have Dan Palmer come by all the time. There's all these people in this community. Milkwood Permaculture were living here up until last October. So we got to spend a couple of years living with them. And so there's a lot of input and a lot of things to be inspired about. But what I'm loving at the moment is now, my 3rd year of being here ticked over in March. And it's the first time really since I've been an adult that I've had a connection to land. And so I've seen all of the seasons pass 3 times now. And I know, the olive harvest is coming up and then there'll be locusts and maybe kiwi fruits, or I know that there's going to be wild chives growing this time of year and I know where they are. I know where we can go mushroom foraging. I know that last week I had to pick the medlars before the birds got to them. Of watching the medlars and remembering last year we didn't get them in time, so we'll be there ready this year, it's an ancient, it's a rhythm. And it's so easy in modern life to box ourselves in and work in our office, in our cubicle, and get into our car and then get back home. And we're always kind of inside, and I'm sure you're feeling it now, Sam, in the hotel room. But when we're deeply connected to land, we do feel these rhythms that we've kind of excluded from modern life. And we keep goats, so in the morning you get up and it's freezing and it's raining and it's frosty and it's just light, and you milk the goats and you feel great. And then you bring them in at sunset and you feel good. And so of all of the things I've learned here, and there's been lots, I know I lied before. I do know a couple of eucalypt trees.
including Eucalyptus melliodora, which our property is named after.
Oh, that's strange.
But yeah, an appreciation of these rhythms and of place is something I hadn't expected would happen. But I'm really grateful it has, and yeah, it makes me so happy. Oh, the leaves are
awesome.
after one hard frost. Wow, you know, next year I'm going to wait for that because I'll know that it's going to happen. And it's only been 3 short years. Imagine, you know, David and Sue having been here 34 years. Imagine their connection. So profound.
Yeah, for sure. Living with a mentor like that must be incredible, hey? Living with someone who's seen the land that many times, seen the cycles it's been through, the insights you must get from them on a regular basis must be incredible.
We love going for wanders with Dave, and because he's been in this region as well, this town, he knows all of the history. He knows when the alluvial flat down Doctor's Gully happened, but how the Spring Gully was different, and he's, you know, planted half of the trees in this town. We went for this huge wander with him the other day and saying, yeah, these redwoods, we planted them back in 1992, and then Vern came and planted all of these, blah, blah, blah. Wow, how does he know this? And all these, because this was mining gold rush country, he knows where all of the hidden mines and tunnels, and they're all overgrown with blackberry.
Awesome.
And even stuff that's, you know, not really permaculture. He has a deep knowledge of this place.
For me, I think the most important part of my journey was living with someone who knew their land quite well as well. I think the biggest legs up we can have come from our elders. To spend a good amount of time with someone that knows their land really well. Maybe you have a different opinion, Brenna. I'd be interested to hear it, but I don't know if there's anything more valuable in what I've experienced than spending a good quality chunk of time with a good mentor.
Like when I came back to Australia from South America, one of my goals was to sort of fast track permaculture learning, so that I could just get on with the job of teaching or drawing about it or whatever. I wasn't quite sure at that stage what I wanted to do with it all, but I knew it was important, and I knew I wanted to be part of the permaculture movement. And so, I came here on a tour. I came down from New South Wales to do an art project, and it coincided with one of their tours here they do once a month. And I thought, gosh, I can pay a few dollars and meet David Holmgren. And I was totally starstruck. And talked their ear off after the tour ended. And now I feel really bad because I know what it's like. They have this huge day where they're on this tour and they're really tired afterwards, and then someone hangs out at the end wanting to chat. So I was that person, and they were very, very gracious. And I basically just said, I want to live here, please. And they said, oh, we're not taking volunteers. Oh, well, what about an intern? No, we're not doing that. Where does your son live? I'll go intern with him. And they said, okay. And within a couple of weeks, so yeah, it's really important. That's all we do. Like our living, breathing, acting life is permaculture.
Brenna, can you connect your mic again? We're getting feedback that it's hard to hear.
Charlie, can you please help? They're getting feedback.
Oh,
nice. Was that you, Istvan? I thought you were going, whereas Brenna was becoming very clear. Do you have questions for Brenna, Istvan? I've been talking.
Yeah, I hold it up because it's so amazed to be listening. You guys so well connected. So you with us? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Sorry. Now.
Ah, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're good. We're all good. Sorry about that.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah, there is a question was touched me straight away when we set up this interview. I always meet a lot of. It's a common pattern to meet an artist, and then they have a difficulties to actually finance themselves or kind of everyday life. So maybe you have an advice for people how can be bringing their passion into the main line, and permaculture, how can we help them to sustaining their own everyday life? So maybe you have an experience to how's your journey and your passion bring you to actually fit into your everyday life. Don't know, is there a clear question for you? So
Yep.
it is a common platform for my, okay, sorry.
Right livelihood it's a very exciting field. We have like a lot of people do a permaculture design course because they're kind of at a crossroads where their job maybe isn't making them as happy as it used to, or they're paying too much in rent and are thinking about other options. And it's quite hard to give advice in this area because everybody's personal situation is so different. And I fully acknowledge that I'm white. I come from a middle class family. I was able to go to university, and that has definitely given me some kind of a safety net, even if it was not a financial one, or it's a safety net kind of in here. I had the confidence to say I can go out on my own and I can wait and see what the world will bring. I knew I liked art. I knew I cared about permaculture. And I just thought if I work hard as a volunteer and meet people, then the right thing will fall out of the sky and land in my lap. And that's when David asked me to illustrate Retro Suburbia, which I thought was a pretty good gig as an aspiring Permi artist. Not a bad first gig, that's for sure. But I understand that not everyone can work as a volunteer and wait because people have mortgages and people have jobs and people have children. And so it's a very personal thing. What I will say, though, is that the way we imagine things have to be isn't the only way. So I've got so many friends, a lot of whom have children and families, who have cast aside this societal expectation that they will work X amount of hours a week in a certain job that gives them status but not happiness, that they will have a house with X amount of spare bedrooms so that they can show their success that way, that they have a double garage and 2 cars. And this growing movement of people who are casting that aside and saying, I will be happier living in a small house or in a shed, a converted shed in someone else's property, than I was in this large house in the suburbs or in an expensive rental in the inner city. And my children will have better quality of life and will breathe fresher air, and we can grow some food or make sourdough or whatever we enjoy. And so choosing to cast aside the status symbols actually means you don't have to earn as much money, because you're not buying those clothes, you're not supporting 2 cars or maybe even not 1 car, you're not paying as much rent. So in that way, thinking outside of the box, you can move towards what really makes you happy. If working in the city really makes you happy, I say stay there, because we need some, people thinking like us in the city. That's great. And if working less in the city really makes you happy, think about how you can transition towards that.
Sorry, you go, Istan. I talked enough.
So as far as I understand, and I like to be just keep motivate the people, because I'm very amazing when I see artists and their creativity actually make something which is actually make them happy and also bring it up to the top surface. It doesn't matter if there are pictures or a music or anything, any kind of form that come up, but if we can help people to not get lost in the financial way, and then just motivate them to having their own creativity, is definitely the way to build a community. Is Is that what you saying for limited by their own needs, don't get a mortgage, or just try to be limited their own actually their own their own financial situation is could be that limited. There's more space for make their own creativity. So yeah, actually I just get a bit lost for the
No, that's
I would,
fine.
can I share what I think I interpreted from that?
Yeah, go for it, Sam.
Because I think that what something that you talk about a lot, Brenna, and something that I think Istvan spent a while living by, and I've given it a red hot crack myself, is living by a gift economy, living outside of a monetary economic system, so as to pursue passions, lifestyles, desires, needs to the best that can be done given the circumstance. Quick little story, and then I'll swing it back to you. Was I met a man at Jeff's place, at Jeff Lawton's place, when I first arrived there, that had he had like a kid on it, like little kid, like kind of like just loved his bike and had this pet and ran around the place and was like this kind of like eccentric, crazy little kid, and beautiful tent that they lived in together. It was his wife as well was living on site while he was like trying to do this like computery, like he did he edited films, and he was doing an internship at the same time. And his family was incredible. They were all incredible human beings doing incredible things, and they were not earning money for living in a tiny tent as a whole family. And to see them loving life doing this was, man, super inspiring for me. So your own experiences living as an artist, just trusting that you'd find your path, must have been scary and difficult at times. How was it?
Yeah, it was because it was off the back of a 6-year trip of mainly volunteering, and there was a point when I'd been here for a couple of months when I thought, what am I going to tell my grandparents at family Christmas? There's a part of you that wants approval from society, and for me, society was embodied in what will my family think, because things like volunteering are sometimes so foreign to them, to normal family members, that they don't understand. They think you're wasting your time or kind of partying it up. Yeah, but I had learned along the way that when I kind of let things go and let things be, that I get better outcomes. Whereas when I try to control things, they don't always go to plan. So I kept faith in that. I knew I was a hard worker, and I was, trying to meet the right people and see, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a tomato farmer? Do I want to get land and run a permaculture place? Do I want to teach? Do I want to draw? What is it? And the path became clear. And even though the sort of I'm going to draw about permaculture connection was made, I'm still figuring out what that means. And I'd imagine I will be until I'm, drop off the twig at 94 years old. So I'm pretty excited about what it does hold.
Awesome. Awesome, Benna. It's been such a good interview. I don't know if there's... Yeah, thanks a lot. Do you have any last questions for Benna before we wrap up, Istvan?
Well, is there any advice for local community? How does it start, and how they can keep up the passion relating into art and permaculture connection? I think that's the whole topic on it.
That's a really great question. And here in Daylesford and Hepburn, there's 2,800 people living in our town. So it's quite small. And it is a very activated town. It's an excellent example of what a retro suburbia town could be, of what a permaculture town could be, if such a thing existed. It's definitely a transition town. And what has made it that way are a few key things. Firstly, there are just a few people in the community who started thinking outside of the box. So we have Artist as Family. You can look them up. They've got a blog, they've got a Facebook, and they live mostly outside of the monetary economy. So they harvest all their own firewood, they take care of the commons, they actually run goats on the commons to reduce fire hazard without chemicals. They run our 5 community gardens. They have a program, which is, they call the Permaculture Living course. So some people go there for a free permaculture design course. It's kind of like a mix between that and volunteering. They're big time activators. We have other people of Dave Holmgren and Sue Dennett's generation who got our tip shop started, who got our food co-op started, so we can buy organic stuff for really reasonable prices. We have a really excellent farmers market. So a lot of my friends are actually food producers, bakers, preservers, fermenters, and they sell at market, because not because they have to or because they couldn't get a job somewhere else, but because it makes them come alive. So once you get 1 or 2 beacons in the dark doing their thing, it's not actually that long before others start to follow. Thing is, to be that beacon, it can be quite challenging if you don't have a support network. So if that's not right for you, that's okay. You don't have to do that role in your town. But for some people, it's fine. They can just keep doing their thing while no one else is. And if you find someone like that, connect with them, and then you've doubled the number of people doing the thing. Get a couple more families in on it, maybe your neighbours, and then you've doubled it again. And that's how these sorts of movements start. So our community, Dalesford, has free fermenting workshops once a month, free herbalism workshops once a month. We have a free beekeeping workshop as well, once every couple of months. We have produce pick days. We have like a soup kitchen that's open for anybody and has community lunches and dinners for free. It's amazing how activated a town can be just because a couple of people moved here and started doing really cool stuff and everybody else got on board. I'd encourage you to look up Ecoburbia as well over in Western Australia. They're one of the case studies from the Retro Suburbia book, and they've done amazing things with their street in what wasn't really an activated area, but they've been the nucleus that has turned their community around. They don't even class what they do as permaculture, although in my books it's 110% permaculture. But they have film nights, they have produce swaps, all of these things that weren't happening before they got there. So yeah, you can turn your town around if you want to. If it's not your thing, find someone who is and support them.
So basically the best what you can do for your town, actually keep up your passion, your creativity. And if that's formed in some kind of art, that's the best what you can give and share with us, share with your community. Is that's the word you say?
It is. And you know what we find here in Dalesford is that, like, I work as an artist, so I get paid to do art. But if somebody from my community asks for something, I will do it for free, of course. And everybody thinks that way. So somebody who gets paid to make bread maybe will swap me bread for art. And we end up getting this beautiful system where, because a couple of people started trading instead of using money, everybody starts jumping on board, because it feels so much better to do something for free than it does to do something for money. So we have kind of a parallel economy happening here, and that means people's passions can come out. My friend is great at hunting animals, hunting roos and deer with his license and passing that on to other people. I've got another friend that's really good at processing the skins of animals so he can make leather. And so people start making their hobby not just to keep in a drawer, but to then use as currency in the community so that they can obtain other things like fruit and vegetables that maybe they're not growing.
So that is so funny when you say it's paid or free. It's always paid, no? And if you do, it's always paid by happiness and love.
Yeah.
Because if you do, and that's make quality of the community, that's made wealth, real wealth, what we actually need to look for and motivate people, how their own creativity can be supported and come up to the top surface and forming some kind of art. So that's the only things that really touched me the first time when you come up to how's the leading between art and permaculture. And for me, thank you so much to taking your time and all the work what you've been doing, and hopefully we're wishing you so much more, and hopefully we will connecting more deeper and more stuff in the world.
Thank you. It's been so lovely to chat to you both.
And,
Me too.
And Sam, is there any last word for you?
Just a huge thank you, Brenna. I think your work is incredible, and the people you're inspiring are amazing. I know people everywhere who are. I'll read some comments that came up while we were talking. That would be amazing. My kids will be getting the kids version for sure, and also would be a great resource for childcare centres. Yes, the kids version of Retro Suburbia is amazing news. That's just a couple. So people are, and I know that one of them's from Lebanon, and the other, I don't know where Izzy is from, but I don't think Izzy's from Lebanon. So there's people from all over the place sending you love and excited to see your work coming out, inspiring people everywhere while staying in your local little spot, doing big change in your little community. It's an incredible situation to be in. So thanks, Brenna. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for the interview.
Yeah,
it's been great fun, and thanks everyone who likes my drawings. Thank you for the support. It's beautiful to feel like there are other people out there that think the same way that I do.
And now just be back to the Lopen and a little bit of fair share with you. Is there anything where we can support you? Would you have anything? What's your needs? Can be give us a chance to.
So through my website, brennaquinlan.com, I have a shop, and you can buy some pretty funky permaculture themed stickers and posters and greeting cards. And Formidable Vegetable, the permaculture band, and I actually have a deck of, we call them permaculture action cards. So they're all different pictures of permaculture actions. These are for sale through formidablevegetable.com and soon to be through my website as well. And again, they're all ethically printed on low waste, 100% post-consumer waste recycled products. And we've been teaching with these for a couple of years now for adults and for kids, and they're really fun and really effective. So if any of that tickles your fancy, go for it. Retro Suburbia is available as well through retrosuburbia.com and also in your library. But the main thing is get out there in the garden, or get out there drawing or writing or making music about the new way forward, about how you want to make the world a better place. I think for me, it's about getting the message out there. So if you've got one, shout it out loud, and that's support for me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So been turned back what we have now. We are a voluntary couple of people who put this all open project together and try to find the edge between the global permaculture movement and channeling into local permaculture network, and hopefully that's grow. But we have this page, and then this wave set up. So we like to be offer all your time what you've been sent. We have a time exchange, so our service or platform is open for you. So if you like to use it for publics or private, feel free to contact us, please. And then this is the way. And I like to call out for other people, if they want to be involved in this project, please just contact us. And then the platform is 24 hours. They're open for anyone who is actually sending out the message or like to be involved. So thank you so much for being support us. And we are in the beginning, but I'm glad to be contact you and well done all your work. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Brenna. Cool.
All right, Sam, thanks a lot for this. We keep tipping away for Lopen, and then hopefully make a little bit colorful for your white wall in the lockdown quarantine.
Yeah, I'm out tomorrow. I've almost got 24 hours left. Probably got 30 hours left.
And
It'll be
then
a good day.
that 24 hours, something's gonna be happening as well tomorrow
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Will
So I'll be interviewing
you
Charlie,
with us?
who's probably in the room with you, Brenna,
my tech
or
guy.
near you at least. Yeah, your tech guy. We'll be interviewing your tech guy, the guy behind the scene. So you'll get to put a face to the to the microphone. Yeah, we'll learn a bit more about Formidable Veg and the music that they're spreading and the things that they're doing, collaborations that they're making with Brenna and David, and what incredible things is going on in the world in the music scene for permaculture and how that's paving a new path. So for now, let's wrap up. Thanks, guys. Been Sorry, we met on a course with Jeff. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, I love you both of guys. I'm looking forward to the tomorrow one as well. And then please let us know if you can help or support from the background.
Great. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.
Bye.